Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the One More Jump podcast by Rise Pole Vault. Today's guest is a special guest, Scott Kendricks, who is the father and coach of the legend Sam Kendricks and the up and coming vaulter, young vaulter, John Scott Kendricks. And we had such an awesome podcast. And I've been wanting to have Scott on for a long time because I just am interested about the journey that they have been on as a family, the amazing success that Sam has had and his incredible performance in Paris to get that silver medal, and just wanted to hear more about it. And he provided some incredible information, some fun stories, and we hope you guys enjoy this episode with Scott Kendricks. Scott, what's going
Hey,
on?
how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. How are you? Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, I'm kind of glad to do it. So I'm gonna prop this up a little bit. So
Yeah, that
all
looks
right,
great. The medals are
okay.
all looking nice back there. We're looking
Well,
good.
this is my little office, and Sam gets the medals. I get a picture of the medal.
Oh, is that a picture?
It's a
Okay.
picture, yes. Yeah, Sam has the medals in his house, and they're up around the office here, but I just get a picture.
Right. Yeah, well, once again, yeah, and we're already recording and we're all rocking and rolling already. So
Okay.
yeah, we just, you're a legend whenever it comes to coaching, and you have a really fun Instagram page to follow, and I've been personally following it over the years, and it's just been fun to kind of follow along with you and your family and all the success that Sam has had, and now John Scott is had an incredible high school career. And I want to get into kind of how I think he's transferring now, and or already transferred. So we'll
Right,
get
right.
into that and everything.
Sure.
But I think first of all, I would like to hear like your personal background and kind of how you came into track and field and all that.
Well, I have to say that you and your family is has been an inspiration to me and Sam. You know,
Oh,
anybody
thank you.
coached by their dad was always an inspiration to me. I had some coaching friends, and when I got a chance to meet Sebastian Coe, um, I just talked to him about what we had in common, and he was a father. His dad coached him.
Mm.
And so I know your dad, got all of you guys involved. And I've had four kids, three of them were pole vaulters.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's not like a genetic predisposition. They were all different. They were all, at our level, state champions, and we thought that was a big deal. That was the point of it, is to try to help your kid become a state champion.
Yeah.
Um,
Same
my
in our
back,
house.
yeah, yeah. So when my background, I came out of a high school program with no real coaching, no real facilities, and I really struggled. And I was good at a lot of things, but I was a failure as a pole vaulter because we had a terrible pit. We had one pole and no coaching, and that's just never going to work. So
Right.
I ended
Where
up.
was this at, Scott?
This was in a little town called Clarksdale, Mississippi.
Gotcha.
And but I was a good enough runner to sign with Ole Miss as a runner, and I was a mid-distance runner. Actually, of the other things that I did, I was actually a decent miler.
Oh,
Even though I
wow.
loved all the other events better, the only thing I was actually going to be good enough to do in college was mid-distance.
Right.
So I did that, and I came in contact with a mentor of mine, Joe Walker, who coached at Ole Miss for 32 years, and he was very much an inspiration to me when I started coaching. I flew in the Marine Corps for 10 years. And then after I came out of the Marine Corps, I went to Coach Walker and I said, look, I would love to be a high school coach. Um, how do I get started? And he just loaded me down with information and advice. And I got started at Oxford High School in 1999. And we had kids on my team that played in the NFL. But
Oh,
we
wow.
couldn't win state.
Oh
We
my
couldn't win state
God.
because I found out that first season that the limitation on my athletes was me. I did not know enough. And in track and field, everybody's got speed, but it's the technical events that make the difference at the state meet level. So
Mhm.
I dug in. I think the first book I got was the East German textbook of athletics.
Oh,
And,
wow.
boy, it's thick and it's got everything in there. And I just dove in and started learning about all these technical events. And so 2 years later, we won state. Um,
Wow.
and pole vault was very important to us because it's one of those events where uh, everybody doesn't do it. And if you can get a couple of good guys, man, you can score some good points at state. So,
Yeah.
we filled every event with good athletes, and I started. I had three boys and three poles at Oxford High School. I bought a pole kind of
That's
for
awesome.
each one, and all of them ended up medaling at state or winning state over the next few years. Because in a small state like Mississippi, you can jump 13.6 and win.
Right.
Back in those days, if you jumped 14 feet, oh, you were just a stud. So um,
Yeah.
I kind of went at it from that perspective. And the other thing that people don't know about us, we actually eventually had an elite program at Oxford High School. Shelby McEwen and Sam Kendricks both medaled at the Olympics this year and came out of our high school program.
Unbelievable.
So we had All Americans, and eventually we had All Americans in the 100, the 200, the 400, the 4x1, the pole vault, high jump. We had tons of great high jumpers. Our school produced four guys 7 feet and above.
Holy cow.
So love the technical events, and
So
so that
you were the head coach
right.
of okay, of Oxford High School.
And so mostly the only coach. Uh,
Okay.
so I had to be knowledgeable and organized. And so,
Right.
I planned on staying there for 30 years until Sam went over to Ole Miss. They had a big coaching changeover and they had a hole in the pole vault. And they asked me to come over there and do the pole vault. So
Mhm.
that's when Sam and I connected again at Ole Miss. That was his sophomore year at Ole Miss. It was
Gotcha.
a big breakthrough year for him.
Oh yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but the other thing is, we started our little school. We started girls pole vault in our state. We were the only state that did not allow girls. I know Iowa doesn't allow boys or girls,
Right.
but we were the only state that had boys but not girls. And I had a little cheerleader named Rebecca Mills, and she wanted to pole vault. And I said, "Well, come on!" And we got about seven girls and seven poles, little pink poles,
Yeah.
and started a pole vault program. And our state said, not so fast. We're not going to have girls pole vault.
Isn't that
And
crazy? What year is this?
this is 2005. And
Gosh, dang.
so we got an attorney and we sued him. And
Yeah, as you should.
and we won. And so ironically, we had seven little pink poles, and that was the year Sam started. And guess what
Uh,
he needed? He needed these little girls' pink poles as a seventh grader to learn. And so
right.
Sam got out there with our girls, and they just crushed him, you know,
Yeah,
because they were all better athletes than him.
that's
And that
hilarious.
was really fun because Sam just got beat like a drum for years. And a lot of people don't realize that. Sam just got beat to death by everybody, and really all the way up through high school. And then he got pretty good. Um,
Yeah, it's like his senior. I mean, I'm not Sam Kendricks historian here or anything, but from what I remember, it was like his senior year was kind of like the big year where he jumped over 17 feet, and I
yeah,
could be wrong.
that was a big deal in our state. Nobody had ever jumped over 16. And
Wow.
Sam jumped 16. Stephen Greer jumped 16. Sam jumped 16 feet one, and then boom, 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 just kept pushing it higher. And that was unbelievable in our state. So the day Sam jumped 17 feet, he cleared it on his first, and we just left the bar up there. We just thought, this is ridiculously high. We left the bar up there for the whole meet for everybody to see, way up there.
Yeah,
And we just went and got something to eat and went on with the track meet. And so
that's
he didn't even
awesome.
take an attempt at anything higher than that.
Yeah.
And we went to nationals. He went to nationals a couple of times, but yeah, that was kind of his. And the whole time, I told you I'd had 13.6, 13.8 guys, and when Sam started really getting good, I was really scrambling to stay ahead of him.
Mm.
And so Earl Bell really helped me. A lot of college coaches that I knew helped me out so that number one, we could get poles. all of a
Right.
sudden, we need a lot bigger poles, and some college coaches just said, "Yeah, you can borrow something," and we go over there and borrow a pole.
Wow.
Um, and so, yeah, that was kind of the time that year. I think we won the high jump at nationals, and Sam also qualified. He didn't do that well in the pole vault because there again, we got to nationals and Sam had two poles. He had a
Oh my
pole to start
gosh.
on, and he had the pole he had jumped 17 feet on. And then we get on this Mondo Super X runway at Greensboro, and he's smoking down the runway. And there's another lack of knowledge on my part. I'm like, why is this not working? He's
Mm.
crushing this pole. And so we're just like, okay, go back to the drawing board that summer and try to figure out what we did wrong. And then he just got better and better after that.
Do you remember what polls they were?
Yes, he had and Earl Bell had advised us on this. He had a 15-1, 180, and he jumped 16 2.5 on it. And
Wow.
then there was a pacer, one of those black pacer carbons,
Uh-huh.
and then he had a 15-7, 185, and I think that's what he jumped 17 feet on, holding about 15-3, something
15-7,
like that.
185.
But see,
Wow.
that was a big, I mean, that was a huge pole for us at the time. And it was
Yeah.
like really scary because, he couldn't jump on it without a tap in training. And
Mm.
so here I am, I'm in training and I'm tapping him, I'm tapping, I'm tapping him. And so we get to the North State meet and there's a nice, really nice tailwind. And I'm like,
Yeah.
pull that thing out. And so,
There
and
we
he
go.
he jumped 17 on a first. So
That's amazing.
yeah.
So was he how I remember him whenever he was younger, because our careers didn't really cross that much, but I jumped with him at a couple US championships when I was jumping
Well,
after
so we
college.
remember watching you guys on YouTube. Remember YouTube, before
Yeah.
Instagram, you had to post stuff on YouTube.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I remember seeing him and he was very small, like very skinny back then and
Oh
tiny. And
yeah.
so how big was he, jumping on that 15-6 185, like how big was he? Do you remember how much he
He was
weighed
he
or
was about 157,
157?
157. Yeah.
Okay.
He was about the same size as John Scott was as a senior in high school, 157. And
Gotcha.
now Sam, he likes to compete right around 180.
Mm,
I keep all the data for years and all these little green books, and I think in Rio, Sam was like 176. So
176.
he's 181. I think he was 181 and a half in Paris because we weigh every day of a competition. And because when your poles are only point 0.3 apart, you need to know. You need to
Yeah.
know the pound.
Right, right. And I think I'm starting to kind of connect a lot of dots here. This is one of the reasons why I've always wanted to talk to you is just because I've never understood your background in anything, and I'm starting to like see like connecting some things. So your background is not like you don't have a huge long background in coaching so pole vaulting was not like your expertise when you were a younger college or high school coach, or was
Well,
it?
actually, it became one, but I was more known as a sprint hurdle relay coach because
Okay.
those are the things we qualified in high jump. I was a real high jump coaching specialist because we had some great athletes in that, and pole vault was, you could get to 13.6, and get score points at state, but until Sam, I didn't need to be a lot better pole vault coach,
Right.
and
Wow, that's
so
fascinating. Yeah.
and so when I tried to become a better coach, some of the things that we gleaned from other people weren't working for Sam.
Hmm.
And so I started, kind of we developed our own style, which is probably you understand that.
Yeah.
And I have to go back here because I marked it. I was looking at it today. This is in that East German textbook of athletics, but I have a graph here on page 295,
Hmm.
and it goes down and it tells you how high above their grip these various jumpers, Bragg, Gutowski, Richards, these straight pole guys, and then the early flexible pole guys, Nordwig, Kozakiewicz, Segrin, Pinnell, especially
Mhm.
Pinnell. So we were trying to jump 540, 550. And
Right.
so I looked at the numbers and I go, okay, who gripped the lowest? Because
Yeah.
Sam was slow. And I'm like, who gripped the lowest? So John Pinnell jumped 540, gripping 1411. I know. He was originally a straight pole guy. And that's one reason I love straight pole training so much. But
Yeah.
Pinnell, he spent in high school, he jumped 13.6 straight pole somewhere in Florida. Then he goes to college, the flexible pole comes in, and he jumped 540, gripping 1411. You drop 8 inches into the box, and he pushed over a meter, a
It's
meter.
awesome.
So, and like I said, we're trying to jump 540, 550. And so these are Sam's numbers, man. These are your numbers. Let's
Yeah.
steer towards these numbers. And so that's kind of where we came up with that model. Gripping high seemed to hurt his back. So we said, okay, gripping lower on a pretty stiff pole. Let's see if we can, how high we can jump above our grip. And I remember all of a sudden he's jumping like 32, 33, 34 inches above his grip.
Mhm.
And when he got to 36, he could jump 550,
Right.
kind of where he was gripping. So
Yeah.
um, that became our model. And nobody can ever see, hey, your kid is going to go to the Olympics. You never see that.
Right.
We could see jumping 550 and getting a medal at SECs, top
Mm.
three at SECs. So that was the goal: get top three at SECs, or then qualify for nationals. So he did qualify for nationals as a freshman. He had jumped 50 as a freshman, and he got 10th at NCs as a
And did he
freshman.
go to Ole Miss all four, or he stopped a little early, but
Yeah, he
did
went 3 years at Ole
okay.
Miss, and
Okay.
that's kind of another long story, but
Yeah.
uh, another different story. But so he goes, um, his I'm back coaching him his junior year, and I'd been coaching kind of from a distance his freshman year because it's just across town,
Yeah.
and so he almost made the trials. That's the crazy story from his freshman year. He missed the trials by 1 centimeter,
Oh my gosh, that's
and he got
crazy.
struck off the list with Derek Hinch and the coach at Northern Iowa.
Jeff
Um,
Coover.
yes, so
Yeah.
three of them got struck off the list by a centimeter, like the week before the trials.
Oh, what a
But we
heartbreaker.
already had our tickets. I mean, he had been on the list for like 3 months. So
Yeah.
we go to Eugene. We already bought our tickets. I had our hotel rooms and all this stuff, plane tickets, venue tickets, and everything. So Sam had to go watch from the stands.
Wow.
And we learned a lot. I mean, because that's what we try to do. We pay attention. So
Yeah.
and we try to see what will work for us, and the stuff that won't work, we just push it aside, and maybe somebody else will come along and we can help them with that information.
I think
Um,
that's the most like interesting thing about you and the way that you coach and what you and Sam have done is you are more of a trailblazer and somebody who's riding scout out in front, like just not really looking at what everyone else is doing and just like taking it as law, like we have to do it that way or we have to do it that way.
well,
That's the most fascinating thing. And that's I think the reason I was saying I think that like I'm connecting some dots is because you had said like you hadn't worked with anyone above like that 13.6, 14 foot area, and I think you were forced to do that
yeah.
because you didn't have a choice. It was like, I'm forced, I have to devise some sort of way to like accelerate Sam's improvement
Mhm.
as quickly as we
So,
can.
well, another example, I had a kid come out from basketball in the ninth grade for high jump. He jumped 7 feet, a
Whoa,
ninth grader,
a
a ninth
ninth
grader.
grader.
He still holds the ninth grade national record. His name's Justin Fondren.
Oh
So
god.
what do you do with this guy for the next 3 years of high school? Well, we improved his technique a little bit, and so, but what you're going to do as a high school coach is you're going to mess him up. You are. You're going to get him some great shoes, and you're going to read up, and you're going to adopt some stuff, and the next thing he's a 6'10" guy.
Yeah,
And that's the
right.
story. So I got him for 3 years, and my my mentor said, just don't mess him up.
Right.
And so we found a way to get him to 7'2.5". But his goal, his last 2 years of high school, was to jump 7 feet every meet, and he did. The only kid I know of who jumped 7 feet outside of some of the really amazing guys. He
Right.
jumped 7 feet every meet, and that was
That's
just
wild.
that's a pretty simple goal. But we trained 1 day a week because it was working.
Hmm.
And so he says, "What do I do the rest of the week?" I go dunk basketballs, man. He
That's
loved
awesome.
basketball. He loved
Yeah.
basketball. And so other coaches said, "Aren't you afraid he's gonna hurt himself playing basketball?" I go, "No, he played basketball every day his whole life. He's not gonna get hurt playing basketball. He's gonna get hurt high jumping or
Right.
doing some goofy training that I come up with."
Yeah.
So I had to find ways and talk to college coaches. Okay, what can I do with this kid? And they were really good, and they gave me some great ideas. Some were great, some were not so great. But I got into his senior year, and he went to Lille, France. He got second at World Juniors.
Wow.
Little high school kid from our school. So Shelby McEwen wasn't the first great high jumper we had. He was fourth, the fourth. But
Wow.
anyway,
That's
I'm just a
incredible.
pragmatic coach, and I was like that in like every event, and I found some cool high school and college mentors that helped me learn some things that would help us. And so, in Sam's case, just getting a little better and making All American. That was his sophomore year. His goal was let's get to nationals and let's get top 8. And
Mm,
so we trained to just make it all American because that was just, man, that was just the ultimate goal for us.
right.
And then he gets there and he wins it. So,
That's
you know,
sometimes what happens.
yeah, we just do the basics and just hammer, hammer, hammer the basics. And we had 2 really good days that year. Texas Relays, he jumped 19, and then NC's, he jumps 18.8.
Right,
Um,
because if you raise just your baseline,
right,
then I've taken from a long look away. I've taken and stolen some ideas that I think that you guys have. These are all speculation up until this point, but my approach to how I think that you guys have done it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you kind of raise your baseline
right, yeah,
slowly over time. And then if you
right,
raise your baseline slowly over time, you're always going to have days that are a little better and a little worse.
right,
But
right.
though that baseline is just consistently raising, and it doesn't take an insane crazy idea or crazy new training technique to raise that baseline slowly over time. And then what you find is other people don't take that approach, and then they kind of just mess up around you. And then all of
Mm.
a sudden it's like, hey, I had a decent day, a little bit better in my baseline, but a lot of other people messed up. And now I'm on the one
Right.
on top.
And well, the other thing was I learned a long time ago from other events, um, the mental aspect is just so incredibly important. So
Mhm.
me helping Sam stay at a pretty high level mentally, and also our training starting his sophomore year, our training was at I would say a high level, and it was very it was individual. That's something I learned from the European coaches. They're going to train one on one or one on two. With
Mhm.
really good athletes. And so, like when Sam was at Ole Miss, I would have the pole vault training at 3:30, and then Sam would warm up about 4:45. And when everybody kind of had left, Sam and I would work together
Mhm.
at 5 for a half hour. But those 8 or 10 jumps were really super high quality.
Right.
And that's another thing when kids come to us or even some elite kids. I mean, we've had a couple kids on their way to U20s stop off with us this week. And, you know, I'm just trying to help them. Uh, don't jump, or what I call them junk jumping. When you get out there and there's 10 kids and there's 4 bungees and everybody's like, woohoo, I'm having fun or whatever. But what
Yeah.
did you really gain? Okay, you
Right.
got some reps in. But when someone comes here and they start like tapping that bungee, blowing through that bungee, I say, oh, well, stop. How do we clear this? How are we going to clear
Mm.
this thing?
Yeah.
And whatever pole they're on, whatever run they're on, I say, all right, what adjustment are we going to make? We're going to clear that thing. And it's the light comes on sometimes. I mean, some of these kids are elite people, and they're like, I just never did that before. I
Right.
never made adjustments like that before. And I said, well, now your toolkit is just tripled in size because now you're actually in training, you're thinking about a great correction
Right.
on
And when
this
you
run,
say a
this pole, making that.
correction, so you're saying that if they're going in and they're, blowing through and just knocking into that bungee reel hard, like hard or
Yeah,
whatever,
landing deep.
you're not immediately going to switch the pole or switch the grip. You're
Because they
going
won't
to
learn.
say,
Well, they
right.
won't learn to adjust that way. So, um, just as an example, I had an athlete come through here, and they had one short run pole, and Sam has one short run pole. Um, and we set the bungee at a particular height, and they were blowing through and landing deep. And I said, "Okay, you got one pole. How are we going to adjust your grip so that we don't land deep and we clear this?" And they're like,
Mm.
"What? It's always just the next pole, right?" I
Right.
said,
Right.
no, 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 no. We're going to make an adjustment. Like in the old days, when you had one pole, it's
Yeah.
all on
Right.
you. And that's why I love straight pole training, because if you're going to clear something straight pole, it's all you, brother.
Yeah.
Can you run? Can you jump? Can you swing? Can you maneuver your body over that bar?
Right.
And so after a few minutes, it's starting to look pretty good. And there's some pros over here on the side, and they're like, "Wow, that's starting to look pretty good." And then the turn is not there, and I said, "Okay, let's start working on this turn and tuning that up a little bit." So I didn't want to leave this coachable place
Mm.
without them learning a new couple of ways to adjust. And
Right.
so, and that probably gets us to, like, Sam at some really big meets, like at Worlds in London. He jumps on one pole. Doha, he jumps on one pole. Paris,
Right.
he jumps on one pole. And
That's
we
amazing.
found that just putting your best jump, if you can just channel your best jump and do that,
Mm.
and then make a minor adjustment on grip or minor adjustment on standards, um, wow, it's more fun. Because when you all of
Yeah.
a sudden you go to that big pole at a big height, and in your mind, like, am I even gonna penetrate? You know,
Right.
what's gonna happen? Well, okay. And this is another silly Sam story, but we're at London, and he's coming over between jumps, and you know how the coaches sit together. I don't want to name them all, but all the coaches are there. You
Yeah.
name them,
Yeah.
they're right there or behind me, and some of these French, Australian champions. They're
Yeah.
all sitting kind of together, huddled together. And he comes over, and he says, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think you can jump that better."
Mm.
And he knew what I meant. And he said, "You know what? I'm going to just try to connect better and put a prettier jump over." And he comes over after he makes the next bar. And I said, "I think you can make it prettier than that." And they're
Right.
like, "Is he going to change poles?" I go, "Oh, heck no. We're not going to change poles, man. This is a good one. This is a good old pole." And I believe he
Yeah.
can jump. And he had jumped 6 meters on that one pole. So I'm like, if he just gets it right, man, he can jump 6 meters on this pole. We don't need to go fishing for poles. I need to get him jumping his best jump. And if he can
Right.
do that, that goes way back to when we just didn't have very many poles.
I
We
like
were
that a lot. Like I so as you're saying that, I'm kind of reflecting in my head on how I coach and kind of how my career's gone and mainly how I coach and instruct. And there are some times that when I reflect and I'm honest with myself, I'm probably having a kid vaulting and it seems like we're chasing a pole and a grip the whole workout. Like where it's just like, oh no, well, that one's too big. All right, let's drop down. Okay, that's another jump. Okay, yeah, let's try one more and see if it'll work again. And that one doesn't work again. We got to go back up. And then all of a sudden you're chasing poles all
right.
workout, and then you
Right.
don't have any consistency,
Mhm.
where you don't even have the opportunity to have those 10 quality jumps
Mhm.
because there's the variable of the pole that you're chasing the entire workout. Actually, one time, my dad, the first time I ever made 550, I jumped 535. This is in college, and I go over to my dad and he goes, "Yeah, I made 35." And he goes, "You got to go down a pole." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Yeah, you got to drop down to the smaller one." I'm like, "Dad, we're going to 550 for the first time, and I just made 535." And he's like, "I know, but it wasn't a good 535. It wasn't a good one. You had that same jump at 50, it's gonna be not good. You're not gonna make it." I and in that moment, this was one of the rare times that I did fully trust my dad 100%. And I was like, "All right, you say it, I do it." And I grabbed the smaller pole and made it first attempt. And
That's awesome.
I was like, "How did that happen?"
Well, uh, and in that same, I was at every meet of Sam's probably for the first, oh my gosh, all the way up almost to Doha. I was at every meet around the
Wow.
world. And so, but after Rio, when he got a medal, I was just exhausted from traveling the 15 and 16. I said, Sam, I'm going home. You and Jeff, y'all go to Europe. And Sam goes, yeah, I'm invited to all these meets in Europe now. And I'm like, well, cool, go over there, but make me a promise. He jumped for his medal on what we call pole 3, which was a 13.0490.
Hmm.
And for him at that time, that was a pretty big pole. And I said, just make me a promise. You'll only jump on poles 1 and 2. He goes to Europe. He jumps 90, 590 twice on pole 2 and ties Renault at Zurich. And he
Oh my
beats him
gosh.
and he beats him at Lausanne. And I'm like, that's pretty crazy. He goes down
Yeah.
a pole. He has more confidence. He's more relaxed. He jumps 90 twice.
Right.
Um, and I did it as a safety measure because I said I'm not going to be there. I've been there at every meet for like the last 12 years. I gotta go
Right.
home.
That's
and
crazy. Yeah,
and
but
so
that is
yeah.
what I've noticed too, is about the way that Sam jumps, is whenever people ask me, athletes ask us all the time, like, "What do you think about this and what do you think about that?" And whenever they talk to me about Sam, I just say he's just completely locked in. And the way that I describe it is, if you're a pole vaulter, you'll understand that you feel really confident and really good from like five lefts, like
Oh yeah.
your short run, your small pull, you can execute the technique perfectly, like everything's great and you're so confident. Well, Sam runs short from full. That's what it looks like to me. Like, it
Well,
looks like he is as confident from full as everyone else is from short.
but let me tell you, this is another stupid small town coaching thing that I did with Sam and his run. Most people don't understand Sam's run.
Mhm.
Sam's run is 6 lefts, just like you just said. I started him as 7th grade at 6 lefts. And we go to Earl Bell, and Earl goes, why is that boy running 6 lefts? And Sam goes, because you did in your video. And so Sam learned 12 steps, right? So when we wanted to run, we needed more speed. And Sam, he was just really good all the way through school and everything, high school and everything from 12 steps. So I said, okay, Sam, what I want to do is I'm going to put a cone here. And we made a small adjustment. I said, I want you to I just want you to jog 2 strides backwards for me from this mark. And we
Mhm.
marked the track. So now what we're at 16 steps, right? And I
Yeah.
said, but your run starts at that cone, 6 lefts.
uh,
And so he would take 2 strides, and now he starts his count down from 6, like he's done his whole life. So
that's so crazy.
if you watch Sam at a big meet, you'll see him standing on the track. He'll turn around and he'll just start pacing off. He
Yeah.
just paces off. He knows it's like 18 walking steps, and he turns around, but he has a mark there where his mark was when he's a 7th grader. Now it's moved back 6, 7 feet from that, but
Oh
I'm just
yeah.
saying. So he starts rolling, and he hits that mark, and he's running the same 6 lefts he's run his whole life.
That is that blows my mind because I'm actually right. He is running short from full.
He's running short. He is. He is.
That's
Uh,
so crazy. That's
but
that's literally what it looks like to me. It
he's
looks like he
literally
has that
striding.
confidence.
If you watch his eyes, he's literally striding to that mark, and he is. You're right. He's locked in from six lefts.
Yeah. It just looks like he is just no, he's not stressed. He's not overextended. He's just he looks like I felt from my short approach whenever I was jumping. And
Hmm.
I've always been like, man, but if you can, that's always been the thing with vaulters and coaching vaulters is, you know, how do we how do we get them to they look incredible from 3 and 4 and 5, but how can we get them to look like that from 8 or 9? Like that's like Luke too. It's like, man, that
Yeah.
looks incredible from 5 lefts, but then how can we get that from 9 on a 5-10?
Hmm.
And
Well, see,
that's
there's
a
another thing.
challenge.
There's another thing, sometimes you have to sell things to your kid.
Mm,
Every kid I had that pole vaulted, I had to sell them my plan.
yeah.
And Sam coming out early from Ole Miss, boy, did I ever have to sell him that, to get him to do that. But and then when he did, it was wonderful. But um, back to Sam, we went in college. He was gripping 15.5, 15.6, and so when he started out as a pro, he was on these Essex 15.9 poles. He jumped 587 on 15.9,
Wow.
and
That's
and
something
we
else.
like that. We like those poles a lot, and going back to the mental aspect, confidence. Before Sam went to USA's in 2014. He was a college kid, and we had just broken a lot of poles and made the switch to Essex. So he has this whole bag of Essex poles, completely untested. We'd only jumped on a couple of them, and here we go to USA's after NCAA's. And so all we did that week is we jumped 17-foot bars.
Mm,
That's all we did.
yeah.
He made every single one on these new poles. He made every single one, and like without a miss the whole week. And all he did was jump 17. So we go into USA's and we know, okay, they're probably going to start at about 5:30.
Hmm.
Okay, we'll be a couple of poles up, and we'll get going and just see what happens, And so we get out there, and no one's jumping on these yellow poles. You understand?
Yeah. Oh
So we
yeah.
get we
I
get out
remember.
there, to Sacramento, and there were honestly a couple of the old hands who were like, "Sam, are you really going to jump on those? You won
Really?
NCs on a black pacer. Are you really going to jump on those?"
Yep.
And he goes, "Yeah, I'm going to jump on them." He jumped 75 and he won. But
Yes, I
but the
am gonna jump
workup,
on him.
but the workup for that, honestly, his first three were 15.9s and his last three were 16.1s, and he won it on a 15.9 at a
Wow.
575. But but going back to confidence, the reason we never went to 510s or 520s, and Sam could jump on a 510,
Yeah.
but it was eating up so much time trying to get him consistent like he is on a 490 that
Yep.
I just had to say, Sam, I think you're just going to be history's greatest 490 jumper.
And that's great. And I'll tell you a little story about this year with Luke. And I went into that same, so 2 years ago, I two a little over 2 years, maybe 3 years ago, I took over Luke's training for my dad. My dad's just he's tired. He wants to go ride his motorcycle,
I
go
get it.
fly fishing.
I
He's
get
like,
it.
hey, if anybody wants to take Luke's training over, let me know. And it wasn't really like that, but I took it over, and I think about things deeper, I think, than normal. Like I really analyze them, and that's why I admire so much about you and Sam and the way you've done things, is because it's not just, oh, that's how they did, it's been done, that's how we're going to do it. So I like to think about, like, okay, why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this? And at the time, Luke was jumping on 510s and they were squishy. Oh my gosh, they just looked saggy and gross. And I was like, why are we doing this? Well, everybody else is jumping on 5'10s. Well, okay. And luckily for your son, I had somebody I could fall back on, not Sam. And so I could say he's always my guy who I can be like, Sam's not jumping on 520s. Sam's not jumping on 5'10s. And so I'm like, why don't we do this? Why don't we drop down to a 5 meters and stiffen them up so they look nice and they look
Mhm.
like they and so you feel a little pop out of them, and we did that, and he had good success, and
Yeah,
I made the world team on those ones.
yeah.
And then
And that makes you feel good.
yeah, it was like, all
Making a
right,
change and you make
we're
team, you know?
yeah, it was really great. And then the next year, he just kind of naturally started to progress through those, and we got to the point where they were getting really stiff and he was kind of jumping over the top of them, I thought. So I was like, all right, it's the year before the Olympic year. I was like, I know that I don't want to mess around with 5'10s the Olympic year. Like I don't want to like start that process. I was like, so I think we're gonna take this year and just see what happens. And I talk with Brad Walker about this too. I bounce ideas off of him sometimes. And he's like, yeah, what's it gonna hurt? Just have them try them, and then you're not trying them during the Olympic year.
Hmm.
And so we go on him. He jumps 80, but he was just more inconsistent.
Hmm.
It was
That's
like,
that's what we had to avoid is
yeah,
inconsistency.
exactly. And so it was like 80, you know, 50, you
Mm.
know, 75,
See,
60.
our advice for some older guys were Sam, if Sam can jump 570 every day,
Yeah.
he can do this for 20 years. And he
Yeah.
can. He can jump 70 every single day.
Right.
And so all of a sudden that translates into jumping 80 at 120 something meets. So, and you jump 80 at 125 meets, all of a sudden you jump 90 in probably 40 of those
Right.
because you're right, you have that good day.
Yeah.
And
You're
so,
always going to have the little outliers that,
right,
are a little better, a little worse.
right. And so, I said, Sam, and I used to tell him, Sam, we care how high you jump, not how high you grip.
Mm,
I really don't want to talk about anybody else's grip. I want to see, I'm going to look at your jump. And if I say lower the grip, please lower it because we're looking for inches over the bar.
mm-hmm.
We don't want to ride a pole. I mean, our friend Sean Barber used to just amaze us. We'd go to Europe and he'd be on
Right.
these 535s. And I'd say, Sean, how do you do that? And he goes, well, I roll it in. And if I'm going to make it, I make a move for the bar kind of.
Oh my gosh.
One day in Europe, he goes, Coach K, one of these days I'm gonna have to learn how to pole vault good, you
Yeah.
know,
He was fun
and
to watch,
he
but
was
that
fun to
was
watch. But
scary at
but
times,
the
man.
but the but the contrast, like he and Sam would go to a meet, he'd be on these 17.6s and Sam be on 15.9s,
Right.
and sometimes Sam would beat him, which was really crazy because
Unbelievable.
you'd
Yeah.
see this contrast between these two jumpers at the end of the competition, and like this is 100% different. And so I'd say about Sam, uh, his mindset, you're saying he's really good. He looks like he's running from 12 steps. We've been on this pole for so long, and he feels so confident that he's just going to try to jump as high as he can on it
Hmm.
and put his best jump up there. And that's just going to have to do because
Yeah.
jumping against Mondo is like jumping against Bubka. You
Right.
ask all these guys that used to compete, well, how was it to compete against Bubka? And they're, well, it stunk because he's going to win every time.
Yeah.
Okay, so if
Too
somebody had
good.
said, hey, Coach K, can you coach Sam to beat Bubka? And I'm like, no, I can't.
Right.
That guy can do things that in El Mondo, he's our buddy, but he can do things no one else can do. And I thought it was an interesting comparison. Somebody posted, well, I guess it's kind of how I got, no, something last week. Somebody posted, okay, Sam and Mondo in Paris. Sam's push was like 1 inch more than Mondo's. Even though Mondo jumped the world
Wow.
record, Sam, he pushed 4 feet 5 inches above his grip. Mondo jumped the world record. He pushed 4 feet 4. And somebody had posted this and said, how is it that Sam is slower and on a shorter pole, but he's slightly more efficient?
Mm.
And my answer is because it's all he can do. because if he was
Yeah.
fast as Mondo, he could grip as high as Mondo, but he can't.
Hmm.
So everybody at the elite level is doing the best they can with all the tools that God gave them
Hmm.
and hoping for the best. And so I used to say a long time ago, I said, Sam, we raised German Shepherds. I said, Sam is the German Shepherd of pole vault. German Shepherd is not the best dog for anything, but it's the second best dog for everything. I said, so
That's
Sam,
awesome. Yeah.
we're gonna be the second best dog. And you know
Yeah.
what? We're gonna win a lot because a lot of times you're gonna be at different meets from the best dog. and
Right.
and so Sam probably competes 27, 28 times a year. Our friend Mondo probably 14 or
Yeah.
something like that. But Sam's out there hustling. He's getting paid less. He's out there hustling.
Right.
That's what he's over in Europe doing now, man. He's hustling around and getting in meets and trying to get some smaller checks, you know. And
Yeah.
so, but back to confidence. Sam is very, very confident in his run and his grip and his pole series, and so he just sends it, man.
Yeah.
His run is on. He goes down there and he just pushes the send button, and he's going. He's just going up.
That's
And
exactly it. Yeah.
if you've done this for 10 years, you've got it dialed in, man. You can really send it. You know.
That's exactly it. And the thing is the 10 years part, because when so I switched Luke to those 510s and then it was just inconsistent. And I was like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we doing this? What I would really like is to have you on the same pole over the course of years, like the same length pole, because then that's how you develop that trust, and you can count on yourself if
Oh
you
yeah.
if you have been on the same poles for years and years and years and years.
And
But
I
I
think
mean, that's,
that's
yeah, so that's like but the classic, kind of.
Sam trusts himself. Like at the Olympics, I'm watching from home at a sports bar with about 100 friends, and I see the look on his face, and I'm kind of texting with Jeff, and he's gonna nail it. He's gonna
Yeah.
nail it. We had a hiccup at 585 because we tried a bigger pole at 585, and he got stood up on it, and
Mhm.
so we just go back to the money pole and jump it out. So
Right.
that's that one pole thing. He did every bar he made on the one pole. We did try one, but you try a pole at a bar you can afford to pass. And so he could
Ah,
afford to pass the 585.
right.
So a miss at 585 wasn't going to hurt him because it's going to take 90 or 95 to medal anyway. So he
Right.
says, okay, we're going to try this big old thing. And at 585, he gets stood up on it. And he goes to the back of the runway. I look at his face and I'm like, yeah, he's got this. He's done this so many times.
Yeah,
And he has
that's the
confidence in
thing.
himself. He's betting on himself. He's not betting on a new pole, a change of a grip, this and that. And the other thing is, it makes him super consistent in all wins. So
Yeah.
we go to a lot of meets in Europe, and the wins are doing this in the stadium, and the guys on the 520 sticks, they're like, "Dude, I can't even jump in this." And Sam's like,
Right.
I'm gonna win, because I can jump in all wins because I've
Right.
got this consistency over time, and this real confident mindset. Um,
And he's not
so
constantly redlining too. Like
right,
most pole vaulters are jumping on the maximum pole that they could possibly jump on. And when you're redlining, you don't have any room left. So
right,
if you have a little wind, not gonna work. If you have, if you feel a little off, not gonna work. But if you are not redlining all the time and you're just like, okay, I know I could be up here, but I'm going to accept down here, and I'm gonna get really, really good at down here, which is still
yeah.
really good. Then you can have some wind in your face. You can have, you ate something bad last night and it's not sitting right or whatever. Like, you can afford those mistakes because you have room to wiggle, in.
Well, I remember you talking about. I mean, Sam was on. Like I said, he started out as a pro on 15 nines, but our goal was to get to 16 ones by Rio. But we made the world team in 15, and we were in Beijing, and I think Sam got like ninth or something like that. We just couldn't jump real well 48-hour window. So that we took that forward and we began to work training so we can jump. Sam can jump 2 days in a row if he needs to. So,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, we're sitting at the hotel and we just ate dinner. I'm sitting on the couch and I'm looking at a book or something. Somebody sits down next to me and slaps me on the leg. And I look over, it's Petrov. And I
Ah.
don't know him from a possum, you know? And I said, "Hey, coach." And he goes, "So tell me, why Sam jump on a 480 pole?" And I
Yeah.
said, "Because he's really slow." And he slapped me on the leg and he says, "Well, get faster by Rio." But he said, increase centimeter, 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 centimeter to 490. And
Yeah.
so, that's just kind of something we did. Sam got faster and we were able to go up just a centimeter and stiffness.
Mm.
So for every inch he went up, we need to go stiffer.
Right.
So his technique wouldn't suffer. And so, kind of back to the technique thing. So Sam's jumping, he's not redlining at Paris. Like you said, those first 3 bars up to 80, just easy.
Yeah.
So how do you take the same pole and jump a 90 on it? Well, you got to make it a slightly bigger pole.
Yep.
Just come down. Just come down an inch. 1
So
inch.
you stiffened it up an inch.
That's right. Just 2 pounds. Just basically 2 pounds by coming down
Right.
an inch. And so he
Wow.
jumps that, and I'm like, you can totally jump 95 on that. He goes, oh yeah, I could probably jump 6 meters on this. But anyway, the point is, it's just those knowing a minor adjustment, and that's just the way he was raised. Not enough poles, so we're going to make a minor adjustment. We're going to make this pole better, and now he's so confident on that one pole, he started calling pole 5 the money pole, because he
Yeah.
used to have pole 3 was the money pole. I mean, if I can just jump on pole 3, we'll get a check,
Right. Right.
and now it's pole 5. It's like a 12-4, 490, 12-4.
Wow.
Um,
Hold on.
so
So he's not on 5 meters right now?
no, 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 no.
Oh,
He's
there
like I
was a
said,
rumor
we
going
want to be
around that he was on
he,
5 meters.
nope, no, he's
Still
not.
16 footers. Or 16
Yeah.
ones, 490s.
Yes. Now he did jump the American record on a 495. He was gripping it
Ah,
right at 16-1. But for my money, it wasn't as great a jump. And I
right.
said, to beat Sam to travel, because the food is different, the bed is different, the hours are different. He's got to jump on his 490s. And to that, and I know, you can look at all those poles behind you, and every one of them is different. And
Right.
it's different. You may have 2 poles that are the same exact length and flex, but those 2 poles are different.
Right.
And so Sam has 4 sets of poles in Europe, but we have determined one set is superior. And that's what he's jumping on this year. And that's why those 90s are becoming consistent, because we actually found the set is superior to the other sets. And that set,
Wow.
believe it or not, that set is 5 years old. It's not
Wow.
a new set, because even the same company with the same numbers, uh, pole to pole, there's a difference.
Yeah. I mean, when you're working with composites, it's kind of like, baking,
Yeah.
like every time it's going to come out a little tiny bit different.
So when Sam was first starting in with Essex, we had 2 sets of poles made by the same people, and he was inconsistent. We're training, and I remember he goes to Reno, and one year he jumps like a 586. The next year he jumps 60. And we
Mm,
come home and I go, how'd that happen? And so we lay out all the poles. And what I had been doing is I said, he used to have a lot of writing on his poles and people would sign them. But I said, Sam, I want you to take a Sharpie and I want you to write how high and at what meet you jumped on every single pole here. And so we kind of went back through the log books and everything. And so he was able to jump up to a 560 on this one, but no higher. And that's a 560 pole. And I never jumped higher than 50 on this one, or 55. And then the bigger poles, well, I jumped to 70 on this. I jumped to 75 on that. I jumped to 80 on that. I jumped 84 times on this. So we laid all the poles out and looked at the numbers we had written on the poles, and we pulled together 5 amazing poles.
Right.
And that was the 2016 set that takes, and he had so many amazing meets. He jumps 90 a bunch and he gets a medal at Rio. But we actually went through all the polls, the same numbers, and we pulled out what we thought were, I love old movies and Western. There's a Winchester 1876 movie. And one out of 1,000 Winchesters was special, and they set it aside and sold it for a lot of money.
Yeah.
We do the same thing with polls. This poll special, we pull it out. This poll special, we pull it out. And we looked
Right.
at how high it jumped on them, and this is the series.
Yeah.
I can jump. This is a good one to practice on, jump 50 on every day. Okay, this is a 60, this is a 70 every day. This one's an 80 a lot. And
Right.
so we put these together, and we still had 2 sets of polls, but he traveled with what we call the superset.
That's awesome. And I mean, I don't know how I haven't thought to do that. Like, why am I not having Luke track what he jumps on each pole?
Just write
Like,
it on the bottom. When he has a good day, write it on the bottom.
yeah. And so then you can look and even at bare minimum, you can, if you're in a sticky situation at a meet and they're having in a bad headspace, you can be like, look at that, dude. You've jumped this, 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 and this on this pole. You're fine. You can do it. It's not a big
I,
deal.
I used
Actually,
to
now
say,
that I think about it, there's a pole back here, a 15.6 185. When you're talking about like how every pole, like there's just some special poles.
yeah,
There's a
yeah,
15.6 185 back here that um I once stayed on, my brother Josh once stayed on, my brother Luke once stayed on, and the kid in Indiana rented it and once stayed on. And
yeah,
it's the state pole. It's
yeah. Well,
incredible.
see, like because of that, for example, I keep all these books and everything, and I can look in my book and I can say, uh, Jeff is texting me, where do we put the standards? And I take a picture of the book and I send it to him. It's pole 5, its standards at 60.
Right.
And I have a chart like how many times Sam has jumped 80 plus on different poles. And so in a particular situation, I can say, you know, it's pole 5, man. It's pole
Yeah.
5. If you have a choice
Wow.
between 5 or 6, you have jumped higher more times on 5 than you have on 6. So it's 5, man. If there's any doubt in your head, it's 5. It used to be 3. Sam used to get into these meets against Renault with these swirling winds, and he'd be on a third attempt. And he'd look over at me and he goes, I know, pole 3, standard 70.
Yeah.
And he'd make it every time, up
Wow.
into about 75. But he'd get in a tight, bad winds, whatever, and he'd come over and he goes, okay, pole 3, standard 70. And he'd get
That's
himself out of a
awesome.
bind on that pole because he knew that pole so well.
And you can't do that unless you take the time to track these metrics. You
Right.
have to track these metrics, and it might, like, it's annoying at times. But the further that I've gotten into coaching and owning our business, like the more I see the value in data. Like it's
Mhm.
unbelievable, like the power and value that data has. Like you're talking about, like how many times have we jumped, even just a simple answer to that problem that I've had, which has been, okay, 5'10s versus 5 meters for Luke. All right, what are we doing here? Like, even if you just averaged the heights on 5'10s and averaged the heights on 5 meters, it would give you a better idea of what the better choice would be. And it takes
And the other
kind
thing
of
is,
your
where's
feelings
your
out of
mind?
it. Yeah.
Where's your mind? I had a young man that asked me one time at a meet, and I followed his career with great interest. But he said, I did terrible today. I jumped 50.
Yeah.
I said, you want to know what I think? And he said, yes, I really want to know what you think. I said, you want to jump 90 so bad, you forgot how to jump 65.
Ah,
And he says, okay, what do you mean? I said, you have to jump 55 and 65 and 75 to even be in the conversation for the 90. So go
mhm.
forth and be amazing at 55, 65, and 75.
Right.
And then you'll carry that confidence into the 85, 90 range. I
Hmm.
said, but you want you're today you want to jump 90. I want you to jump 90 today too. But
Yeah.
boy, I want to see you looking good at 50 and 60 and 70 and 80. I want to see you looking good at that. Then your headspace is right to jump 90.
Right. Well,
So,
and the thing is too is I asked Luke this as a thought exercise is to kind of give us direction and to give me direction as a coach too, because every individual is different in what they want out of their career.
mhm.
Um, I asked Luke, what would you rather have? Would you rather have one 590 or a full season of only 570s? And he's like, well, full season of 570s.
And guess
And
what? There's going to be an 80 or two in there.
exactly. And
There's going to
that's
be
the
an 80 or
whole
two.
thing is and you take like your friend like you're talking about, and it's like, well, let's see if we can get consistent 5 centimeters higher this year and see if we
Mhm.
can get 5 centimeters higher the next year, consistency. And then
Well,
those
yeah.
outliers become higher with that, you
A
know?
lot a lot of people, I just get tickled all the time because people get out there and they compare. They're actually making a comparison with Sam and Mondo, and I go, "Man, y'all just don't get it. We're from small town. We just wanted to make All-American,
Yeah.
and then we wanted to make an Olympic team. We got to Rio, and, I just get I have I have a space in my heart for people that, number 1, don't make the team because, if they didn't make the team, they felt like they were a failure, and we just never felt like that, but he made the team to go to Rio, and he made the final, and we're back behind the stadium. And I said, just don't forget, we're from a small town in Mississippi, and we've already won because we're
Mm,
here at the Olympics. You're going to jump, you're going to pole vault in front of the whole world tonight. And I said, there's 12 guys, 9 are going to be disappointed. Don't be disappointed because we've already won. We're
right.
here. You got the USA. You're going to jump on TV. We're going to yell and scream for you. You've already won.
Oh yeah.
And that was all that we had in our mind. And then he gets a medal. He gets invited to a bunch of meets in Europe. Then the next year he wins the world. Ugh. And so I was like, gosh, this is like not what we were even thinking. And
Yeah.
so Sam never thought he was going to have a career. I never thought he was going to have a career. I thought he's going to be working at, Cellular South or something and pole vaulting in the evenings with me. And
Yeah.
struggling. And I told him, I said, Sam, a professional pole vaulter, you're going to struggle, man.
Mm,
You're really going to struggle. And and he did for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden, you get a medal and everything changes. And also that had to change for me because I'm like, okay, now my goal was not to get him to Rio and get him a medal. Now my goal is, can I coach a world class jumper over years?
mm-hmm.
And so and I have to give props to my wife because she bought off on all of this, you know, me leaving and traveling. I traveled for 5 years around the world with Sam. And so we still
Yeah.
had 2 kids at home. And she said, I'll do that if you can go out and help Sam. And business travel, that's what it is. It's business travel. And I did business travel worldwide for 5 years for very little
Right.
money.
Right.
I mean, Sam does pay me, and a couple years he paid me pretty good.
Yeah.
But I didn't do it for that. I did it to try to help him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, look what happened. He wins a world championship, and then 2 years later, gosh, he won it again. And
Right.
so at that point, I said, Sam, brother, I got to stay home. So I haven't traveled with Sam
Yeah.
since 2019,
Yeah.
and I just don't like international travel anymore. I've just done so much of it. And Sam
A
is
lot.
young, and his back is young. My back gets hurts in those
Yeah.
airplane seats,
I bet.
and so and see, I flew 10 years in the Marine Corps, so I don't have a great back anyway. And so
Uh,
then you get in the back of the plane and little bitty seats and everything, and my back was hurting all the time. And
when
so
you say
now I'm
really quick, this is a random tangent, but when you say you flew in the Marine Corps, I was unaware like how that like so there you can fly in the Marine Corps. I thought that was just the Air Force.
oh, I flew fighters in the Marine Corps for 10 years. I have a picture on the wall up there.
Wow.
But I flew off of aircraft carriers. I flew 28 countries to in and out of 28 countries. And I was one of those guys that landed on a carrier and stuff like that. And but
Unbelievable.
what that taught me the capacity for learning and learning a lot. And so it kind of opened up my mind to my mind. And so
Mm,
when I told my kids on my high school team, I said, guys, I'm going to learn the stuff if you'll learn it for me.
Mm.
And so the Marine Corps, being a pilot and having to just memorize massive amounts of information and be able to utilize it, helped me coach.
Right.
And that just, and the method of being organized, because my first team, I had 99 kids, and it was just
Wow.
me, and I'm coaching 17 events, so I had to be really, really organized. And but at the same time, it also helped me quantify the things that are going to help a kid get better.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna skip that step. I'm gonna skip that step. I'm gonna skip that step. And so, like when it came to coaching Johnny, I skipped a whole bunch of stuff that Sam and I did.
Right.
I said, because that's time I can use on this to get this better.
Mm.
And so, so now, like when when Johnny went to Arkansas and they're doing like some short run stuff, Johnny's short run was 6 lefts. And they were like, okay, well, today we're running 4 lefts. And he goes, well, I don't run 4 lefts.
Right.
I've got a pole bag here and I run 6. And they're like, well, try to run 4. And it was very frustrating
Yeah.
because he didn't have a
Yeah.
pole for it. He didn't have a pole for it.
Oh, yeah. That's not
So
good.
then it goes to 5, and it's still difficult because he didn't have a pole for it and he wasn't getting much out of it. But I'd skip steps, and I said, okay, he has a 6 left and he has an 8 left, and
Yeah.
he's got poles to support that. And so when Sam jumps short, he's got 1 pole. He's got a 15-1, 185, and he jumps
Wow.
it from 10 steps from 5 lefts. And it's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And we just try to, we do that 4 or 5 weeks in the fall, and then boom, we go back to long.
Yeah.
So we just skip a lot of the stuff that
That's
other
so
people
crazy. That's
might
that's
spend time
a
on.
that it's just wild how captured a vaulter can get by looking around and trying and comparing themselves to other people. So you said Sam uses a 15-185 from 5.
Yeah.
I used to do drills on a 5 meter from 4.
I love that.
I
Listen, there's so many different models that work. And so kids that come to us, I'm like, okay, you're using this model, this works. His little sister Charlie was really slow, and she had a different model. Johnny, kind of a better athlete than Sam.
Hmm.
So Johnny could dunk a basketball. Sam still can't dunk a basketball. So
Wow.
Johnny can lift more weight than Sam because Sam never lifted.
Hmm.
So, Johnny goes to Arkansas, and baby, they lift there. And
Hmm.
he got really, really strong. And he comes home and he's working out with Sam like over Christmas. And he's like, Sam can't lift much weight. And I go, yeah, but he can win.
Yeah.
It's what you need. It's
He's
what
good at what he does.
Jeff
He's the best at what he does.
Jeff Hartwig told us a long time ago, and Earl told him this, I'm sure. He says, you need to be fast enough to pole vault, strong enough to pole vault, gymnastic enough to pole vault. Okay.
Mm,
And if you can be uninjured, that'd be great.
right.
So, Sam at 31 years old, he trains probably the least he's ever trained,
Right.
but he physically works. I mean, he's got crews that are going out doing construction and doing all this kind of stuff. And Sam is out there, they're turning wrenches on engines, and they're doing
What
building
is that
stuff.
for? What is he working for?
Oh, he has a couple of businesses that he operates, and so when he's home, he's a dad and a husband, and he's running these businesses. And we're trying to run, start up the training center and everything. But
Yeah.
honestly, he's out there in a pair of work boots and um, a pair of
Wow.
work pants, and he's come over there and literally kicked off his boots, pulled off his pants. He had a pair of tights on and demonstrated for a kid who was taking a lesson. And then he goes back over there and they're fixing mowers,
He
you know.
stays ready, doesn't he? With the tights under the pants.
Well, the other thing that my daddy played college football with guys that just came back from Korea.
Mhm.
And he said, you know what? These guys didn't train, but boy, were they ever tough. And
Yeah.
he said they would smoke cigarettes behind the coach's back on the bench
Oh my gosh.
during the game. And so
That's crazy.
dad would say, he goes, those guys literally a Marlboro and about 5 deep knee bends, and they're ready to just knock somebody's block off. And so that became kind of a Sam thing. He goes, all I need is a Marlboro and a few deep knee bends, and I'm ready to go.
That's
I
so
heard him
funny.
say that because he's done it a lot, but his fitness is high, but right now his training is low.
Right, but what people don't realize and people don't think about they think about training as in like, okay, this is what happened, this is how I trained this year.
Hmm.
And then the next year they did this, and then the next year they did that. But they don't think about it as like they're like your body doesn't understand years, and it doesn't
Hmm.
understand like these time frames that like these constructs, so like your body is like, no, it's like, so the last 10 years is just one training block to your body, like it's just the way you've
Yeah.
trained for the
Yeah.
last 10 years. And so now Sam is in such good condition, and he's done, he's stuck to what he does for so long that it probably doesn't take as much maintenance
Mhm.
as the
Well,
normal
and
pole vaulter.
so like last year, coming back from that injury, he had no world ranking. And so he got on a plane and went to Europe, and he had no world ranking. So it's difficult for Sam to get into meets, but he just gets in every meet. But we jumped 4 times before he left. Four.
Wow.
And he goes over there, and my instruction to him was jump every bar because that's your training. And
Yeah.
so you see Sam come in at a 30 or a 40, or he's coming in because he goes to Europe, he does no training. So this is his training. If he's going to get in maintaining the endurance, it's going to be from that competition.
Right.
And so when it gets to these long competitions like the Olympics, man, you got to have some jump endurance.
Right.
And so he's
Oh yeah.
traveling all the time. So where is he going to get jump endurance? In the meets. And so he goes, like I said, last year, I think he was in 27 meets, and he was
Wow.
better at the end because he's really got great jump endurance. His technique is coming together and all that kind of stuff. And so it's a very old school way of thinking about it.
People
An
don't
old,
think about training as meets as training. That's another one of those things that it's like, I was actually filming an Instagram video with our content guy John the other day.
yeah.
We were talking about or no, it was on another podcast that hasn't come out yet. And we were talking about the fact, like one of the questions from Instagram was, how many times a week should I be sprinting without a pole, and how many times a week should I be sprinting with a pole? And I'm like, well, if you're pole vaulting 2 times a week, you're already sprinting with a pole 2 times a week. Like, but
Mhm.
you just don't think that. You don't
Right,
realize like,
right.
oh, my meet is actually it's a practice, and it's not only a practice, it's the best possible practice that you could have. It's the most,
Jumping
specific
bars in a meet is
practice,
the best
you
you'll ever
know?
get.
Yeah,
Jumping
it's the
bars in a meet.
premium. So if you look at it like that, and like you were talking about, it's like, okay, well, we don't have that much vault endurance. Gosh dang, a meet will give you some vault endurance for sure,
Sure.
especially if you vault every bar like you're talking about and you have a warm up and all of that stuff.
Well, the other thing
Um,
is we kind of stole that from Earl too, because I took Sam to Earl when he was an eighth grader, and Earl wouldn't put up a bungee for the warm up.
mm,
And they just did drills and whatnot. You ready to start? He's going to sling up a bar. And Sam goes, Earl, would you put up a bungee? And he goes, what for? And he goes, well, I just kind of want to jump a bungee. And he goes, pick a low bar, Sam. That's your warm up. Pick a low bar. And so as
wow.
Sam came up through the ranks, we always picked 2 low bars, and that was an extension of the warm up.
Right.
And he jumped those 2 bars. So people don't realize in a meet when Sam's jumping, say maybe he jumps the 40 and then the 50, we're figuring out where to put the standards for the rest of the day.
That's an extension of his warm up.
We're using, but in the warm up, a lot of times they won't even give you depth of standard or whatever, and the bungee sagging. But um, like Earl said, we use those first 2 bars to get calibrated to make the next 3 or 4 bars. And so it's an
Wow.
extension
Nice.
of the warm up. And see, like NCs, Sam didn't sit around for an hour and a half before he jumped at NCs. He jumped the first bar. They said, Sam, Drew, you're going to jump 5'10"? He goes, yeah, I'm going to jump 5'10".
Yeah.
Are you going to jump the 20? Yeah, I'm going to jump the 20.
Yeah.
And he jumped every one because he didn't like to sit around because it made him nervous.
Right. Yeah, it
So
is a long time to sit around. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I I might rather have somebody, continuing to, stay warm and get some jumps in than just
So he jumped
sit
a
around.
in college. In college, Sam would jump. Gosh, he jumped on these little poles early because,
Right.
like Earl says, you don't want to blow up a 16.6 by 2 feet. You want to clear it by 6, 8 inches.
Right.
That's a good jump. How are you? You're warming your body up to do it correctly.
Hmm.
You can blow something up by 2 feet and do it completely incorrectly.
Right.
So Sam would jump he'd go to meets, he'd jump the 15.6, he'd jump the 16, he'd jump the 16.6, he'd jump the 17, all on a little pole from maybe, 14 steps. And people were like, gosh, Sam's jumping off low. He must be hurt. No,
Right.
he's having fun.
Yeah.
He loves pole vault. He's having fun.
And now
And
you add up those extra ones over
yeah,
the course of a full season, and it's like, well, Sam's got 100 more bar clearances in a meet than you do,
we
and it's like, whoa, that's crazy.
we used to when we go to Europe and Sam would jump these low bars. I remember Renault came over to him one time and says, Sam, why did you jump the 530 and the 540? And Sam pointed to the scoreboard. He says, because I'm ahead of you right now. Because you haven't jumped yet.
Yeah.
He says, I'm ahead of you. I'm going to be ahead of you probably for 3 bars. And after that,
Right, right.
I'm going to be ahead of you. Back home, they're seeing I'm ahead of you right now. And
Wow.
he's
I mean,
jumping
that's a
these,
good way of looking at it.
and
He's got such good comebacks, man. Sam's got such good comebacks. Yeah.
because he even told me, he said, I got out on the field and just looking around at the crowd, this is what the Olympics is supposed to be like.
Hmm.
Tokyo was not like that. This is what it's supposed to be like. And these people are having fun and yelling and screaming, and it's awesome. And he said, I just had to kind of take it in. I had
Oh,
to take it
yeah.
in.
I'm
So
so grateful that I'll just say this. When Sam Kendricks goes and competes at the Olympics like he did, and just him as a person, I'm personally so proud of him and that he's representing our country pole vaulting and just
well,
the way he conducts himself and just
yeah,
everything.
he's just a good small town guy.
It's
And I told
incredible.
him, well, I said before, he competed over there. I said, Sam, remember the whole point of the Olympics is friendship through sport.
Hmm.
I said, most people get really out of whack about what it's all about. And they start thinking about, oh, if I do good, then this will happen to me. And if I do bad, I stink or whatever. And I said, if you go out there and you think these are my friends, he knows everybody. These are my friends. Let's have some fun. Then you get what I think is the Olympic spirit,
Yeah.
because to be honest, there's better track meets than the Olympics. I mean,
Yeah.
you go to Zurich for the Diamond League final, it's a better track meet, man.
Right.
Um, and it's
Right.
short. It don't last a week. It
Right.
lasts 3 hours.
It's a great point. People don't realize that, in America, all they think about is the Olympics, and they don't realize that the Diamond League final is going to be pretty nutty too. Like it's going to be really good, and the
And you might,
Olympics is pretty
yeah,
pretty hyped up for sure.
it is, and but your sponsor, they make you. You're penalized if you don't make the Olympic team. You're penalized if you don't make the world team.
How
And
so?
yeah, I mean,
How so? What do you mean by that?
they deduct from your contract.
Oh, wow.
I know, and so Sam and I talked about this too. I wish the Olympics had some sort of policy where you can only go once. I mean, go to the
Mhm.
World Championships a million times,
Yeah.
but to go to the Olympics, if it's really about friendship through sport and that sort of thing, everybody gets a shot to go get a piece of that. But what do we do in America? We go to Eugene and we eat each other alive for
Mhm.
those 3 spots to go. And you know, Sam said it. People think you're no good if you don't make the Olympic team, and it's not true. Everybody out there is amazing,
Right. And
amazing.
I
But
agree. I agree.
yeah,
I agree with well, I don't I'll retract that statement. I appreciate Sam saying that. But as an American former pole vaulter, I want Sam Sam needs to be the guy
Well,
going to the Olympics because I know
he's
he's the most automatic, he's the most dialed in, and he's our biggest as a competitive American. He's our best chance at getting a medal, coming out of those trials in Eugene. So that's why I heard I was there obviously, and I was listening to his speech to the stadium, which I thought was really good. Live on the spot. He's always so good with his words on the spot. And whenever that he was talking about that, I was like, is he even gonna go? I was like, oh man, like in my head, I was like, this guy, he might not even go. He seemed very, obviously upset about what happened. And I am very happy that he did that and what a great performance and, everything. But
well, he's got a sweet mama.
yeah, there
That's
you
what I
go.
always say. He's got a grouchy daddy, but he sure has a sweet mama.
There you go. There you go. So really, really quick, I knew this podcast was going to go long, just because there's a lot of stuff that I wanted to talk to you about. But right now, like so the way that it happened with my dad and our training is in the beginning, everything was super heavy on, we're doing what dad says,
Mhm.
exactly like writing all of it. We didn't know anything, but as time went on, he started kind of being like, okay, he started taking our um opinions into consideration, things like that. And then slowly over time, it shifted to where a lot of the stuff we were writing for ourselves, and then it was like more of a collaborative relationship.
Mhm.
How has that worked for you guys?
Well, I would tell you for a number of years, because Sam is so close with Jeff Hartwig, they would talk about training off the runway, and I pretty much I was Sam's technical coach on the runway for training.
Mm,
And then last year, after Sam, he had an injury and he really wanted to have a great year this year. And he said, Dad, would you write my fall training? So I did. I wrote his fall training and I'd written Johnny's training for years and everything. But every day we go into training and I'm not dogmatic about we must do this, this, and this. We take an assessment and okay, can we do this?
mhm.
Should we do this? And on vault days, he'd come to me and I used to use this grip tester and I kept a chart as how strong his grip was. If he had 145 pounds of pressure, he's man, baby. He can jump today.
Yeah.
But if he had 125, he's not recovered. And so he lied to me.
Ah,
And I go, how do you feel? He goes, oh, I'm super. And I say, squeeze it. He'd squeeze it and be 125. And I go, man, you're off like 15%. And so
wow, that's cool.
I would modify the workout. And now he says, well, I'm 80% today. And I said, okay, all I want is 100% of the 80. And we scale everything down, you know, and I'm planning a workout to do 80% performance, but I want him to 100% to do that. In other words, to totally buy into whatever it happens to be. Um,
Right.
and so yeah, he knows so much and he knows his body so much and he's learned so many things from so many physios and chiropractors and great sports medicine people. He'll crack my back. He's got a table over there and he goes, Dad, you're not walking right, jump up on my table. And
That's
he,
nice.
he does everything but my neck.
Ooh,
Don't touch my neck.
yeah.
But he's so knowledgeable because of that association and friendship with Jeff Hartwig for so many years. And Jeff, through Earl and Jeff, he transferred so much knowledge over to Sam that Sam, he knows what he needs to do physically, and then I know what I want to see when we're on the runway, and
Okay.
and so keeping the quality really high. You talked about Johnny a little while ago. Ask I asked one time in high school if Sam would take over Johnny's training, and he said, "Nope." It's hard.
It
It's
is.
it's hard. It's hard coaching your son. It would definitely be hard coaching your brother. And I would have to say that probably turned out. I mean, Johnny jumped good in high school. He jumped better than Sam. He broke a lot of Sam's records. But Johnny was more difficult to coach than Sam. And I think it's because Sam came up so incrementally, and then all of a sudden, springtime of his senior year, he took off.
Right.
And his confidence was high. He PR'd every meet.
Yeah.
Johnny, on the other hand, our goals for him were we want to be the best ever ninth grader in the state. And he
Yeah.
jumps 14.8. Okay. And then we want to be the best ever 10th grader in the state. And he jumps 15.8. And then we want to be the best ever junior. We were shooting for 17. We didn't get there. We got 16.10.
Mhm.
But his goals at every step were pretty big in his mind. And so it wasn't as easy. And so I had to
Yeah.
use so many things I learned working with Sam. Okay, that's not working. We're switching to this. This is not working today. We're switching to that. And by that means keeping him moving forward without ever having a real setback, you know.
Yeah, I imagine that would be that's interesting that you bring that up, like the difference between training Johnny and like just his goals and things like that. Because with Sam, it was probably just like every level that you hit is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we made it to this level,
I
you
know
know?
exactly.
And then now, poor Johnny's got to follow that up. And it's like, oh man,
Yeah, but you know what, for
now it's a
Johnny,
super high goal, or I don't know.
well, I don't know that we have those types of goals for Johnny, but in school, man, he wanted to break every record Sam set in
Mm.
high school. And so we would go jump in an indoor meet. He's like, how high did Sam jump? And I got,
Oh, really?
how high did Sam jump at that meet? I said, well, just look at the meet record. It's on the
Yeah,
sheet,
right.
And so the only high school record Sam still has in Mississippi are meets they no longer have. In other words,
That's
if we go to
crazy.
like Southern Miss used to have a meet, Sam's the record holder there. They don't have it anymore, so Johnny couldn't do that.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh. Yeah,
so
I
so
got lucky because I'm the oldest. But they changed the boundaries in our district before
mm,
my brothers got into high school. So I went to a different high school. So my record's there, and then they can't break that record if they don't go to that school. So
but you're from a family of great pole vaulters, and it's gratifying to know that hey, your two boys are the two best ever in the state.
unbelievable.
That's a,
Yeah.
that's a, that's a that's a
Crazy.
that's a thing that I really hold as a memory. Those
Mhm.
high school meets, they're just so fun. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
and when you're really good, you get to call your shots at the end. You get
Yeah.
into the NCAA until you get to be like a junior, you ain't calling any shots, man. It's just
Yeah.
the next bar. It's the next bar. So
Yep. So that's so how did that all shake out with Johnny and him coming back to Ole Miss and all that? And then are you the coach? Like, are
no,
you
no.
going to be coaching him
Well,
or
Brian Porter, I work with Johnny off season, and
okay.
he went to Arkansas, and Arkansas is pretty incredible. They win;
Yeah.
they're winners, and
Oh yeah.
he won an SEC indoor ring, an SEC outdoor ring with them. But he was the only pole vaulter, and I talked to Travis about this over there after we decided to go into the portal, but just training by yourself as an elite pole vaulter. Um, and they're good. They're elite all across the board there. But the one elite pole vaulter, I just didn't feel like he was going to progress without a training group. And
Mm.
so, he's transferred to Ole Miss. Ole Miss has got 4 guys this year at 520 or higher.
Oh,
And so
great.
that's a good training group. And
Yeah.
they've got 6 guys and like 8 girls. And, you're going to have that camaraderie that he didn't have at Arkansas because, men and women in Arkansas are not together.
Mm.
Men are completely separate. So,
Yeah,
uh,
that would be difficult at that
it's,
age.
yeah,
Once you get older and you get out of college, that's you can be on your own unless Sam's still going. Sam
but
could very well still be going
he
whenever
could
he's
be.
getting out of college.
But I feel like, and he feels like too, he likes the kids over there, and being in a practice where there's a lot of laughing and teasing and messing with each other and excellence. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a kid over there. He's a pretty consistent 35 guy, and there's that will make both of them better. There's, like I
Mhm.
said, 4 guys above 20. They'll all get better. And plus, shoot, it's going to be easy if I want to go grab a chair and sit in the bleachers or whatever and watch practice, like I used to do with Sam when he
Yeah.
was a freshman. That's going to be really easy.
That's really cool. Yeah. And, one thing that I had on my little sheet here was just the technical differences between those two. Like they
Yeah.
vault a lot differently. So like how do you just let them jump? Like when you started them off, did you just kind of let them jump and did you coach around their strengths?
Yeah.
Or did you,
And
how did that happen?
yeah. And so when Johnny got started, because Sam was so successful, he wanted to try to jump like Sam. He couldn't. His back always hurt.
Mm,
Sam's, hands were close together, stiff poles. Um, and so I said, you know what, Johnny, I'm really, as a coach of all events in high school, I used to really take it to heart when one of my athletes got injured because I said, that's on me. I'm the one pushing the training out there. I'm the one who's supposed to be smart. So, and speaking of smart, I always think the first bar is always on the coach. So
yeah, that's a good one.
first bar is on the coach. The rest of them are on you, but I've got to be good enough to get you over that first bar. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, so I said one day, and it was like over Christmas, and we had a runway back here in the pasture, and mom came down there. I said, you know what, Johnny, we're going to try something radically different. I'm going to spread your hands apart, and we're going to slow this thing down a little bit, and just kind of let it flow and see what it looks like. And boy, it started to look good. And
Yeah.
now it wasn't all gravy. There was some ups and downs. He no-hided once his sophomore year, and so it wasn't all just fun. But his style developed. He could hold higher than Sam
Yeah.
in high school. He could take off. He could take off farther away than Sam, and also Johnny developed a closer connection with the pole. I mean, Johnny connects with the pole better than Sam.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's aggravating to Sam when they're jumping together. I say,
Right.
hey, just get a little closer to the pole like your brother. Shut up. I don't want to hear that. You know, um, or I'll say, Sam, I said, I would love to see a little space between your feet. He goes, oh, you're just saying that because he does it. I said, well, maybe we should just do that and see what happens.
Right? That's
But
awesome.
anyway, uh, but them jumping together is, in your family, it's the same thing. It's just fun. It's just, that's the funnest it gets
Yeah.
is when kids are out there having fun doing a sport together.
And think about I think about this often as I've gotten older. Whenever people ask like about, how was it having your dad as a coach and things like that. And I mean, my dad did an unbelievable job of being able to separate, coach and dad, and he never really blurred those lines, and he was always, he always first I was his we were his sons, like the first and foremost, and then second is like, yeah, this is just gravy that we get to work together and do this coach athlete thing. But you just think about, and yours is even on a different level, think about the experiences that you get to have like with your sons and
Mm,
that I got to have with my dad
yeah,
and how much time you get to spend together and how much quality time and there's definitely lots of fighting, kind of interwoven in there, and
sure. Yeah.
frustration and things like that. But as a whole, it's like, holy cow, like how many people get to have that experience with one of their parents? It's
Well, I
unbelievable.
heard a man say this one time, and I think it applies to like my career. When I came out of the Marine Corps, I could have been an airline pilot, and I could have been gone all the time and made a lot of money. But I just decided, you know what, I'm going to turn a different direction. And Sam and his twin brother, they were on the field with me 12 years. So
Wow.
that we didn't have an after school program. They came to track or cross country, and they were with me. And so I would say very few young men get to see their father at his best.
Mm,
And so I think my boys have seen me, and my daughter, they've all seen me at my best. Dad goes off to work in a lot of cases, and he may do great things there, but you don't get to see it. And
yeah.
but they got to see me on my best days, and we've had some successes, and have been able to share that, like you said, like you and your dad did, and your brothers did. And that is a gift that is you can't quantify that. You just can't.
No.
It's there's so many great memories. Uh,
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not all. I mean, I have been like, especially Johnny. I mean, you know, like this, and he's. There have been some days he would probably say, "I just hate that guy,"
Yeah, right.
but you get past that. You get past that, and I try to have to very clear lines between the coach and the dad. You know,
Yeah. And it's
try to.
it's it's a definitely an art form. It's a something that you know you get better at, and it's cool too because you know I know Sam has one
Yeah,
son, right? Okay.
yeah.
So I've got two little girls, and
Oh, that's awesome.
so it makes me really think about, you know, me having this pole vaulting gym and this business and being so invested in the pole vault. You would think that possibly they might want to, you know, pole vault. They certainly have a good setup for it. Um, but it makes me really think about like how I want to, you know, how to do that. My dad set such a good example of how to coach your kid.
Mhm.
And now I am potentially going to be tasked with that same thing.
Yeah.
And he's just set such a great example. So you didn't even realize it, but you were setting that example for Sam. And you're setting that example for Johnny. And now my girls, you talk about getting to see, you know, their dad at their best. Um, what was really cool was that this is another great experience was my girls were in the stands in Eugene at the trials final looking at their uncle and their dad
Yeah.
as a coach athlete, you know,
Yeah.
relationship, getting
Yeah.
excited together and seeing that. They have no idea what that means, but one day they're going to get older and they're going to be like, "Holy
Sure.
cow, that was pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
crazy," you
Well,
know?
see, Sam's little boy, he spent the night with us last night because they only live 600 yards away through the woods.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, that's
I
wild.
literally I get on a four-wheeler in the morning and I can go over to practice through the woods at Sam's place. You can't see his place. There's, acres and acres of forest between us, but we're very there's a dirt trail, literally a four-wheeler trail that goes between our places. And so
Wow.
I get to see him, I get to see Alistair every single day. Hardly a day
Wow.
goes by, and that's fun.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, and I one of these days I got to get down there. I talked with Luke yesterday about it. Just to go and I would like to see you guys set up down there. And I actually do have, I told Sam, I talked with Sam at Indoor USA's and him and I want to do another podcast
Mhm.
and him to tell me the whole thing that you guys are doing down there. And we're going to wait until after the Diamond League final. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's really, really unbelievable, you know, kind of what's happening and all of that stuff. But
Well, he
anyway,
still got still we're still putting that together. And the problem, one of the problems is people want to come here to train and they want to see Sam, and they want to some want to train with Sam, some want to train with me,
mhm.
but he's not here because he's still
Right.
traveling. And
Yeah.
so, like, the prime time, is summer, kids taking lessons and getting involved and so forth, and he's not here. And then in the fall,
Yeah.
kids are off at college, and you just don't have the time or whatever. One of the cool things I love about Sam's place, though, is the lights. Um,
Mm. Oh, so you
having
got like stadium
Oh
lights?
yeah, he's
Oh,
got some
wow.
super legit lights, and so in the summertime, it's hot down here.
Yeah.
Man, there's no place better to jump in the evening than Sam's place with those lights on. The
Oh,
wind is
that's so
nil,
cool.
and I mean, it's got surround lights from like ten lights in every direction, and
Jeez.
so it is really a great place to jump in the evening. And he built it in such a way that if the American Track League wants to have a pole vault event here, they can have it
Yeah.
here because
Let's
everything's
do it.
totally, yeah,
That
that'd be
would be
awesome.
so cool. I talked with Luke about it a lot yesterday and I think you know one more last kind of thought is I think what we're starting to see right now with this giant kind of just progression of the pole vault, you know, even the trials, you know, was if you look at it like 10 years ago compared to
Mhm.
now, it's just like, oh my gosh, it's unbelievable
I
how
know. I mean, you
competitive
could
it
make
is.
the team. You could make the team with a 65 on a first,
Yeah,
just a
I
few
know.
cycles ago.
Yeah,
And
it's
now
unbelievable.
you got to jump 85.
Yeah.
It's
And I
crazy.
think I think what we're seeing is the first wave of like private instruction in the
Oh yeah,
United States. And
yeah,
you think about okay, go through the lineup. How many of those people either jumped with a club when they were younger or jumped with their parents or just
mm,
had some sort of special access. You've got
sure,
you and Sam, Mondo and Greg, and Chris, jumped with Rick Attig. Casey jumped somewhere in Missouri, some
yeah,
sort of
yeah, yeah.
club situation there. And I
Uh-huh.
think what we're seeing now is that first wave of people who had more access
Oh yeah.
um compared to what we used to have, which was like, well, we get five, 4 or 5 months, at best of pole vault access. And
Mhm.
and now, we're getting more people involved with access to be able to vault. And then, right behind me, that's our rental rack. It goes way that way and it goes way
Wow,
that way. Um,
that's crazy.
and we've developed an app around it called PVR,
Yeah.
which a lot of the clubs are using to rent their poles. Then once we get better access to poles and more economical access to poles, and then all of a sudden, I think we just still see just kind of some crazy progression here in the next few years, and you guys are starting that down there to give people, I think, to give people more access to quality pole vaulting and things like
Well,
that.
one of the things that, like I said, a couple guys came through here on their way to Peru for U20s. What they want is it's just knowledge because they can pole
Mm,
vault,
yeah,
but they want that, there's so many different perspectives. They want to jump and get our perspective on what they're doing. And if we can say anything that might help them in just a little bit, that's what they want.
yeah,
And might stay a week, might kids in town staying 2 weeks.
yeah,
Um, and so getting multiple workouts. And so if I could have, when Brad Walker was the American record holder, if I could have taken Sam to some place and said, "Hey, Brad, would you work with my kid for a couple days?" I
yeah,
wrote the check.
right.
So that's kind of what Sam is hoping to do. Is these college kids, they'll swing by here, and some of them have, and just to get maybe just another little perspective, because
Yeah.
everybody does things right. Every club, there's so many places that do things so well that they might just be thinking of what's that one little thing that I'm missing, and it
Right.
could be something as simple as like we were talking about. You know what? Don't chase a pole. Find yourself a good one and put your best jump up there, man,
Yeah.
and bet on yourself. You know,
Yeah, that's what it is. And the more people that you get to talk to and the more perspectives you hear, like you were saying earlier, you are kind of a culmination of all the people that you've,
right, right,
taken stuff from in your past,
mhm.
and that's all I am too. We're all climbing up on the shoulders of other coaches before us.
And see, I find myself a lot of times a kid, he might not necessarily listen to me, but when I tell him that so and so told me this once, ding, that's gold. I'm just the conduit.
Yes.
I'm just the conduit.
You know what it is? That's why this podcast started. So the reason that this podcast started was because I had started Rise up here in Chicagoland. And some people know us and some people don't. Like it bothers the heck out of me. Sometimes we'll actually take a microphone and for Instagram, our content guy John will like walk around and ask people like, "Hey, name 3 professional pole vaulters." And like just put them on the spot and they'll be like, I don't know. So some people
Mondo.
know. Yeah, that's exactly what they say. Mondo. And then there was one girl that said,
Mondo's dad, Mondo's sister.
that's that's basically what it is. And so anyway, in the beginning though, I was trying to sell that I knew what I was talking about, because you have like 10 kids and it's like, man, this is not going to support this facility and blah, blah, blah. So I kind of had to sell that I knew what I was talking about because they had no idea who I was and that I had been an accomplished pole vaulter in Illinois and who my family was and things like that. And honestly, they don't even really care. But they just want to get better. So what I did was I was like, you know what I should do is I need a resource that I can point them to that can kind of validate what I'm telling them.
Hmm.
And that's how the podcast started, is because I knew that if I started talking to all these different people, that I would be able to call on the podcast to tell these kids, like, oh, you know what, I can see you're kind of balking at what I'm telling you. You should go and listen to this podcast, at this time, and listen to the American record holder talk about it. And then they can go and listen to Sam talk about, yeah, this is why what I do, and it could be the same problem.
Yeah.
And that brings me back to one thing you said earlier, which is going to help me out a lot in my general workouts here, and everyone, all the coaches here, is when you said that you dropped Sam's grip to jump the higher bars in Paris, or you guys, or Sam dropped his grip to jump the higher bars in Paris,
Yeah.
because I have to fight people every day to tell them not raise their grip. Like, it's like, stop raising your grip, like we don't need to raise our grip. Actually, to make this work better, we got to drop our grip. And they're like, no, that's not going to work. So now I can call on this podcast and I can say, go listen to Scott Kendricks talk about Sam Kendricks in Paris, how he dropped his grip in order to make things work better at the higher bars. So that's
Well,
that's why the podcast started.
trade a little depth for a little more height. But
Yeah.
you're these athletes that come here, a lot of times what I will use with them, I'll say, you have a perfect jump.
Mhm.
And all I'm trying to do is help you find that perfect jump. And I think a little adjustment is going to help you find perfect, because good and perfect could be this far apart.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
this going up sometimes can get you in trouble,
Right.
And so all I'm trying to do is help you find the most efficient uh, technical model. You got a great technical model, and I'm just trying to help you find uh, to refine it, because you can't refine it more than perfect.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the perfect technical jump from you, and if you give me that, brother, that's the best you can do
Right. Right.
on that pole. Now you may go back 6 steps and you may go up to a bigger pole, but I'm still looking for the same things. From
Mhm.
that run, I'm looking for your perfect jump, sister. And if we
Yeah.
can find that, I'm going to say hallelujah. Let's go get something to drink. Let's go get us a Gatorade, because we have just done something amazing.
That's exactly it. And whatever's going to set you up, whatever pulling grip's going to set you up to be able to do that is what we're rolling with, and
That's exactly right.
that's
That's
awesome.
exact. And there's so many things we could talk for 4 hours, but
I know. I
I
know.
I love talking to people with lots of experiences that I've never talked to before, and I gain a lot from that. I mean, I'm just looking at these poles behind you. I go, my gosh, look at this set of rental poles back here, and
Yeah, it's a
of course,
lot.
all of these people that you've had on the podcast, you learned a ton from. I
Oh yeah.
learned I learned 300% more after I left the NCAA.
Yeah.
I mean, so much now that when I go back down and go to an NCAA meet, it's like I'm speaking Chinese. They don't have a clue what I'm talking about, because
Right.
I learned so much more stepping out from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do, is just get stuff out there that,
Yeah.
people, there's just not a lot out there that us pole vaulters can pull from. And we got this
But I've listened to a
amazing.
lot of y'all's podcasts, and they're fun, and if kids will listen to them, they'll learn. And
Yeah.
coaches too. See, I hate a coach who thinks he knows it all. I just hate that because
That's annoying.
I'm
Yeah.
learning. I'm learning every day.
Yeah. The best coaches are. The best coaches never stop. They never stop learning. So. Anyway, well, we could probably wrap this up on that. And I just wanted to say thank you so much and congratulations to you and your family and all that you guys have done. I'm excited to see how the transfer goes for Johnny and how Sam does in this Diamond League final. Looking forward to it.
Well, he's won it twice and he's been second about 4 times. So, he's that German Shepherd. I hope he's going to be in there.
I love that. I love that metaphor. Oh, that's good. So, anyway, well, thank you so much, Scott. And this is the One More Jump podcast. Thank you guys so much.